Hey, what's up, YouTube? How is it going? Hey, have you guys ever seen one of these little, look, check this out. It's a little walker mower, and it's actually like, it opens up. It's got the motor in there, and the back opens, and this goes up, and it's got the blades that spin. Did you guys ever see that? I got these are like little walker mower toys, you know. I don't know. I was thinking, since it's almost Christmas, I was thinking about, years ago I gave one to my son, but he was so small that he beat the heck out of it and broke it. But anyway, it's pretty cool. Thought I'd show that to you before we get started. So let's get going with our 5 on Friday questions and stuff, guys. I want to thank you again for all the comments, for all the questions. If you like my channel, hit subscribe. Okay, I really would appreciate that. And ask me some questions. Leave a comment down there in the comments below, right down there, and let's get started. So I got some decent questions this week. We're gonna get right to it. Again, Steve with the Scapers Network answering your landscape questions. Let's get rolling today. All right, my first question is from a Brandon Tubeck. And Brandon says, love your videos, super helpful content, not just fluff. Well, I'm glad you don't think it's fluff, because I'm trying not to produce fluff. I'm trying to produce, information. So I appreciate that. So he asks, what would you say is your average crew's productivity level versus windshield time in an average day going from site to site? We're in the process of moving from primarily residential to commercial sales next season. That's a good question, Brandon. So there's a couple ways to go about dealing with windshield time. First of all, I think you need to make sure that you put that in your estimates. So the software that we use, it actually has a 5-10% basically downtime that is added into, which could be attributed to drive time, load, unload, that type of thing, which is then calculated in our hourly wage. So from that perspective, from a bidding perspective, you have to keep that in mind, whether you're using software or whether you're doing it, on your own, or the old-fashioned way with a calculator and a pen and pencil. Secondly, so how do we deal with the drive time? And I'm going to show you one of our kind of old school route sheets. Everything we do right now goes through our computer software, which is LMN. But right now, I still use these kind of old spreadsheets that I used to make a long time ago. And each crew has one. They don't really use it on a daily basis, but if you take a look at this, and my visuals are not the greatest, but I X'd out the names of the jobs. But if you take a look at this, I'll put it up by the camera so you guys can see it. So if you look at that, you can see that I've got my budgeted hours in the first column for each job. I've got the day in the second column. So the second column will tell you, what day of the week that job is on. And then I've got drive time figured in for that particular day. So to figure drive time, say for a crew of 2, okay, so let's say, for example, we've got 2 guys that are going out to do some commercial jobs or residential, it doesn't matter. And they're gonna drive for, 15 minutes to get to the first job. Well, that is a total of actually 30 minutes, because you've got 2 guys. So you've got your 2 guys times 15 minutes, that's 30 minutes of drive time that has to be allocated somewhere within that day's budget. I put these hours on here so that the crews can see them, so that they know this is how much drive time I expect for these days, total man hours. So the first day here, I have 2.25 total man hours. So my foreman who's doing this route knows that, if he's got 4 guys in that truck and they're going for what, 15 minutes each, one way, and then 15 minutes back, what is that? That's 15:30. Yeah, so that's about an hour. That's another hour. So it seems like a lot of hours, but really, if you just look at the actual windshield time, it's less, but you have to make it so that it's man hours. Okay, so you have to allocate that as man hours. So for example, the crew here on Monday, their Monday route is then a total of, their first job is budgeted for 16 hours. Their second job is budgeted for 14 hours. and then our total man-hour drive time is 2.25. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 32.25. So they have 32.25 man hours for that day. It's a 4-man crew, so it's basically an 8-hour day. I try to set up all my days as like 8-hour work days, including the drive time, load, unload, and so on. Also, if you look on here, you're going to see one day of the week has equipment budgeted in. So you want to tell your crews right here. So you want to tell your crews that they have X amount of time to, pull equipment on their mowers if you have them doing that. So, greasing, changing blades, sharpening blades, doing the visual inspections, making sure none of the, belts are broken or cracked, the general blow out the filters, all that stuff. Like, you want to tell your crews, hey, if you've got 4 pieces of equipment, for example, it's going to take you 15 minutes per piece of equipment. If you've got 2 guys working on that, that's like, half an hour. So you want to make sure that you're telling your crews how much time they have. We actually have load in time, load out time. We allocate the time that they get gas. We are actually going to the gas station now, so we're not, just doing gas here on our property like we used to do. I've got my reasons for that. Some people might disagree, but it's working out well for us. That's a super long answer to my first question here, but I thought I'd explain that a little bit more in depth so that you can get an idea of it. So this is an old school. You can do this in Excel and just make sure you put your days together, add up the man hours for each day, divided by how many people are on that crew, and give your guys 8-hour runs to do the work if you want them to stay away from overtime. All right, so thank you for the question, Brandon. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to go to Law Enforce LLC. He wants to know how many people in the winter does it take to get the job done on a single storm for us. So we don't have a ton of snow that we're doing this year. So we downsized our snow. I said that in the last video. So I only have, in the winter, I use subcontractors, and I use like a couple, people here on staff, but not that much. So I really don't have a lot. I would say I have probably maybe 12 to 15 people working for each storm that we have. So between our trucks, our shovelers, I have a person managing it for me. It's kind of an interesting situation, but I've got a part-time operations manager this year that's helping me out. It's working really well, and I'm doing it that way. So that's about it. Like I don't do a whole ton of snow, but that's about what I have. That's the amount of people that I have for each storm. Now, if it's just a salting event, I might only have like 3 or 4 trucks go out. If it's a full-blown 2-inch, like in Cleveland area, we're looking at like 2-inch triggers here, then I will have, everybody go out. And our snow doesn't all fall at the same time in the same place here. So we have a couple sides of town here in Cleveland. One side's called the Snow Belt, and if you live in that area, it's like never stops snowing over there. We don't live in that area, so we get, the average amounts of snow in the Cleveland area. We don't get the huge, every other day snows over in the Snow Belt. So, but having said that, where my accounts are, they are on kind of 2 sides of town. So I have a route on the west and a route on the east, and it just depends on where the snow falls. The east side route might have more snow, and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 guys will go out and do that, and the west side guys will stay home. So it really just depends on how much snow falls and where it falls. Law Enforcement, hey, thanks for the question. It was nice to meet you at GIE. All right, my next question comes from, let's see, Jacob Kreider. So because we were talking last time a little bit about using like service autopilot and stuff like that. I was a little confused with your question last time, so Jacob wrote me back and kind of explained it a little bit more, because I was kind of thinking, he had asked the question about, do I use like Dodge Reports, Construction Journal, or the subscription bidding sites to get like municipal bids and maybe have them feed us bids. The answer to that question is actually I do have a site. I have a local site that is sponsored by a local, it's actually like a local community college that sends me like all of the government bids. So that's how I got some of my government work over the years. And that site is free, but it's only here in Cleveland. It's only like right in my area. I would suggest that maybe you try to find something like that maybe in your area. It was sponsored by like a community college here, and I happened to go to one of the meetings and found out about it through the director of that college that told me, hey, all you have to do is sign up for this. So we'll send you all the bids that are basically for landscape maintenance, snow removal. So I did get some really good work off of that. I don't know a lot about these other sites, but I do think that especially if you're starting out and trying to get into the commercial world, it's a really good idea to get as many leads in as possible from as many sources as possible so that you can get the ball rolling with commercial work, because it's a tough business. There's a ton of competition. So the more you can get yourself experienced at going out and bidding properties, starting to know how property managers are, what they're like, what they're looking for, those kinds of things, I think it's going to go a long way to help move you on that road to getting into commercial if that's something you want to do. But I have used some of the sites. I've used national companies as well. There's the national companies out there. I'm not even going to name them. I've had good, bad, and ugly experiences with all of them. I would say if you're going to subcontract for a national company, like say for example they knock on your door and go, hey, we have every bank in the area, like would you want to bid on those? Make sure you know exactly what you're bidding. Make sure you know what their terms are. Make sure you know when the contract starts, when the contract ends. So just know who your contact is, who's going to be checking those jobs. Someone going to be out there account managing those jobs on top of your company. So basically, instead of your account manager or your foreman running those jobs, they're going to be somebody else calling you out. Hey, there's a weed over here. You got to look into that stuff when it comes to the national companies and make sure that you're vigilant so that you know what you're getting into, because you can have a good experience with them and you can have a bad experience with them. Got to do a lot of homework and kind of stand your ground with them. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Jacob. All right, next is Sunset Mowing. Do you offer residential snow plowing? I'm navigating that monster and looking for your insight. We've only done a little bit of residential snow plowing over the years, and a lot of times it's for clients that we already have. Very little. I don't think we'll be doing much in the future either. Residential snow plowing for us just it's not justifiable in my market, I guess, for me to allocate my equipment, my resources, machines, trucks, everything, subcontractors, like using those for a residential setting at this point in my business is not, it's not the best use of my time and energy. So I'd rather be on bigger commercial properties, bigger parking lots. We really love the office complexes, the business headquarters, the strip malls, things like that, small businesses, medical facilities, assisted living facilities are okay. Like all of those places are better. They're a better fit for us. Also, there are customers during the summer. So we really don't do much in the residential end of it. But having said that, it's probably a relatively easy market to get into, especially if you've already got the residential work. I would say, knock on the doors and say, hey, we're going to offer plowing this year, and get your feet wet that way. Get started in it that way, and then you could also move to commercial after you get a couple years of the residential under your belt. All right, so Sunset, thank you so much. And finally, one last question. And I can't really pronounce your name. Ardaloa Bardaj. That's the best I can do, man. So anyway, he says, great video. My question is, how do I move from residential to commercial? Give some steps and which is better. I've said this before, residential is one animal, commercial is another animal. And I think there are a lot of different ways to get into commercial. You can try some of these bidding sites. We talked about that a little bit ago. I think your reputation, number one, is super important. Number two, some of the steps involved. do some cold calling, have some flyers made. Make sure you drop off some flyers and cards at local establishments that you might be interested in maintaining. It's nothing more than walking in the door, knocking on the door and saying, hey, my company does landscape maintenance work in this area. I'd like to know if you'd like to have a bid. Start asking your residential customers. They all work somewhere. So or maybe they own businesses. Maybe they work in an apartment complex. You don't know until you ask. So start asking everybody you know. Ask your employees. Hey, do you know anybody that's a property manager? Do you know anybody who might be interested in having us maintain their work property? Or maybe, there's somebody that's an operations manager, facility manager that they know or related to. Ask your friends. You have to really go after it in every aspect that you can. If you are in a homeowners association, write down the name of that association and Google it. Go online, see if you can hit up the board of directors over there. There's always a president, vice president, treasurer. Send them all emails. Tell them, hey, I'm Joe. I've got this landscape company. I do a lot of work in this area. I'm real interested in your property. You got to get your foot in the door, and you got to really pound the pavement and don't stop until you start getting some of those jobs. Hit up management companies. Look them up online. Everything that you can possibly do. Go to your Chamber of Commerce meetings if you can. I've gotten jobs from my Chamber of Commerce meetings. And I don't know about Facebook ads and things like that, advertisement. I'm sure that's all good stuff too. But if you want to make that move and you want to start getting into the commercial world, first of all, you got to look at what you're going to make on that work versus residential, because sometimes it's not an upside. There's not an upside to it. It depends. It really depends on your market and what kind of residential work you're doing. If you're doing super high-end residential work right now, then maybe commercial's not for you. You have to make that decision and look into that market that's in your area. So that market in your market is super important to know what's going on in there before you start jumping into it. Okay, so hey, thanks a lot for the questions. I appreciate it. And that's it, man. That's 5. So I hope you guys are going to have a good weekend. I hope that you're ending strong this year. We've talked about that before. A couple more weeks left. We got a couple weeks, so keep pumping. Today was a nice day. My guys were out doing work again. We're trying to wrap up fall cleanups and trying to still sell work, trying to make as much money as possible before the end of the year. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome for watching my channel. Hit subscribe. I love you.